credit vote.
I'd like to make a motion that we not issue any oversized credit to Dayton United Methodist Church for the request of February 22nd, 2019.
Motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carried. You have BF&S utility easement contract.
I'd make a motion that we sign the agreement papers with BF&S for the easement acquisition with the Dayton United Methodist Church.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carried. And partial relief.
On the partial release statement that we had mailed the church earlier, they came back with wanting a paragraph added to that. My motion would be that we not change the release statement in any way. What we had voted on earlier, I would let it stand, and that this additional paragraph not be added to it.
So how will that paragraph read then, if we don't change?
The release would stay the same, so we would not do a new release with this added language.
Didn't they?
What's your understanding of what that will leave us with?
My understanding is that we would be agreeing to return the $23,000 number. I don't have the exact dollar amount for the storm water fee or whatever it is referred to in the service utility agreement. We would agree to return that if they would release us from any other liability pertaining to that in that service utility agreement.
Yeah, so paragraph 2 states that they are releasing the town of Dayton from any and all claims arising out of the utility service agreement related to the stormwater cost recovery fees totaling $23,230. So that's the release that we're getting if we don't add
That's what-
paragraph 3. So,
If you don't add paragraph 3, is this paragraph 3?
correct.
Yes, so my motion would be to not have paragraph 3 in there.
I just want to make sure that you understand that not adding paragraph 3 doesn't mean that we actually get released from their claim for interest accrued in obtaining a loan to fund stormwater cost recovery fee and oversized credit costs.
Okay? Why does paragraph 3 need to be in there?
Well, if we wanted to make sure that we got that release, we would need to go one step further and say that instead of adding paragraph 3, we're gonna add language that says the parties do understand that the release includes a release for a claim for interest accrued in obtaining a loan to fund the stormwater cost recovery fee and oversized credit costs. So all that we had originally was we were getting a specific release for the stormwater recovery fee in the amount of $23,230. So we're now asking for more, is all I'm saying.
We're not asking for any more than we originally had asked for.
The release would provide for more than what we had originally provided for.
They have a release now that this board signed and passed.
And I guess what I'm saying is, if we don't specify one way, then it's not a good contract, because it's just gonna likely lead to litigation, because they're gonna argue one way and we're gonna argue the other regarding the scope of this release. So, if we go back to them and they agree that we cannot that they'll take this out, then we're gonna need to put language in saying that, you know, the scope of the release actually includes that, or taking it out doesn't really mean that we're getting anything, any benefit from that. They're gonna still have an argument that,
They could still ask for the other monies they'd asked for, but putting this paragraph in, just, there's no question about it. They can go ahead and ask for anything.
It just spells out that they can ask for anything,
That's right.
which
but-
defeats the whole purpose of having it released to begin with.
No, well, if you don't sign it and don't put this in, they could go back and ask for, instead of 23,000, they could ask for 43 or 63 or anything too. They wanted to make, you guys drew a contract up and said, look at it, make any change. They made a simple statement in here saying this doesn't affect the other things they were talking about. When you wanna take that out, it sounds like your intent is that you wanna keep them from raising these other issues.
I don't,
That's what it sounds like.
you say take it out. I do not want to send a new release to them with this paragraph in it.
And by doing that, you're saying that because you're saying then you don't really want them to ask for any other monies, or you think that they won't be able to ask for any other monies. And that's precisely why they put this in here, so that they could ask for other monies. They don't want to be left just stopped right here. You know, they originally, in their original letter, asked for all the things at once. We've broken it down into 3 different issues. So what they're saying is, here's the first issue. They want the right, is what I understand, to go ahead and ask for the other issues.
And part of the other issues is looking at their claim of interest occurred in obtaining a loan to fund the stormwater cost recovery fee. If we're returning the cost recovery fee to them, my understanding of that release was that they would release us from any other claim having to do with that stormwater fee.
no, they had 3 claims, we settled 1, there's 2 remaining, because the loan has to do with the fact that they had to take out money. I mean, they had to do that because their argument is gonna be that they had to pay for the upsizing, and they had to pay for the stormwater recovery fee. There's 2 separate amounts listed in their parameters.
I understand that, yes.
So,
In this
We
is,
can always say no, actually. I mean, when they bring up
Right.
any other issue, each issue is individually, and yet, we've already agreed on the stormwater.
we're gonna be back, somebody's gonna be back here in 17 more years, fighting over this again.
No, they're gonna they want, the rest of these original questions, they want us to go over and answer.
Okay,
I
and
guess
that's
my
and that's
point
what we're
is
doing
that
right now.
I drafted the contract with the understanding that this was not including a release for the interest. So they came back and said, hey, just wanna make sure that this is our understanding, so that's why I think that it should be included. Because I drafted it, and I was trying to carve it out to the specific claim for the cost recovery fees. That's the only thing that we're paying for, that's the only thing that we settled. So, I mean, if we just go forward with
So
the
the-
contract, they're gonna still, I mean, that's what I'm saying, if we take out paragraph 3, I think that most likely the effect of it is still gonna be the same. That they're still gonna be able to bring a claim for the interest, because we don't have anything in there that says.
And if you
that
put
we're releasing
paragraph,
it
if
from
you
that.
put paragraph 3 in it, then it's saying absolutely that they could bring suit against us for, stormwater cost recovery.
Yeah, so if it's the same result either way, and my intent was to draft it the way that they're saying, then.
Well, my intent when I made the motion that we return the stormwater cost recovery to them was that they would not bring litigation against us if we return that money.
That being the 23,000.
Yes. And you're telling me that the original release does not say that. So you're saying that release says, here's your money, and by the way, you can still go ahead and sue us and stuff, which,
On other stuff, actually.
you know,
Okay,
On other
let
things.
me explain this.
I'm not talking about,
We are-
I'm not talking about oversized credits or anything like that. I'm talking strictly about the stormwater cost recovery.
Partial release, you guys already voted not to give interest, and you guys just voted not to give oversizing. Therefore, you guys voted no, because it's two separate points, but they can legally take the town to court if they choose to. This is why this is a partial release, because it's only hitting point number one.
Which is the stormwater.
Right, but then there's a point of interest and then a point of oversizing, which you have voted both no.
In the release, I understand that the release does not release them from taking legal action against, oversized credits. But my understanding of the release, that it would prevent them from taking further action against us for interest as it pertains to the stormwater.
It's separate points, and that's what he's trying to explain, that's why it's called a partial settlement.
Well, partially
So there
because
would
it's-
have to be, there has to be three different settlements for the three different points. I think that's what Reed's trying to
Yeah.
explain.
I'm trying to explain that if the result that you want is not gonna be achieved, if we just don't accept their paragraph 3.
And it's also not gonna be achieved if we add this paragraph 3.
Correct.
So either way, it's not achieving what I had thought it would achieve, which is to prevent this town from having further legal action,
So-
claim taken against it as it pertains to stormwater.
So tell him what your actual outcome was. You want the
You want-
actual outcome to be that we're done with this.
I had thought, and evidently I was wrong, that by returning the stormwater cost recovery fee to them and then signing a release, that would prevent further claim to the interest on the stormwater portion of the service utility.
I don't see how that,
Otherwise, why do we even have a release? Well, we just drop a check in the mail.
I mean, we've explained, it's the same reasons that we've already explained, because they could have made a higher claim. I mean, they could have made a claim for attorney fees.
You're
And
okay on what
there's no reason not to, because they're willing to sign it. I mean, that's the important thing.
They're willing to sign it, they can't come back and ask for more,
Well,
you know?
Ron, it says right here
But I
that they
was
can
gonna say,
come back and
read
ask for more.
Read the paragraph, Ashley.
They can't.
Parties understand this partial settlement and release does not prevent the church from pursuing other claims stemming from agreement for utility services, including any claims or credits for the installation of oversized sewer or a claim of interest incurred in obtaining a loan to fund stormwater cost recovery fee and oversized credits. You know, the oversized credits part of it, I get that. Okay, we're not releasing them from that. You know, we voted a minute ago not to give them any credits. But the stormwater cost recovery fee, I disagree with.
Actually, what I meant, no more cost. They asked for all three of these things originally, and we're just taking point one. Point three down here, they can still ask for interest on these things, but what I mean by signing that is that we don't sign it tonight, the deal's done, they could come back next week and take us to court and go for double the amount or triple the amount, plus the interest, and all these other things.
Well, yeah, he can sue anybody for anything, I get that, okay? You know, whether or not they succeed, you know, that remains to be seen.
Well, we all agree that the stormwater goes back, we voted on it, we agree with it. Then if they bring up and want us to ask about interest, we can argue that and say yes or no, we can come with our reasons, they can come with theirs. You know, but they have every right to ask for it, we don't have to give it to them, I guess.
Well, I'm not gonna give them permission to go after us by including this paragraph 3 in a release.
There's a distinction between them saying that we think part of the stormwater recovery fee includes more money, okay? And then just saying, hey, we had, their separate legal claim is we had to take out a loan, and for whatever reason, okay, whether it was oversizing or for the stormwater cost recovery fee, And somehow, I don't know what legal theory they would be applying, you know, it has nothing to do with, it's nothing stated in the contract, but they have a claim that because they voluntarily chose to take out a loan, that they are entitled to recovery for interest on that loan. So it's a loan interest claim. It's different than the amount that they are entitled to for the breach of contract for the stormwater cost recovery fee. So I think that, you know, the law only allows what I have drafted up. I mean, I'm trying to get the best deal for you guys, but, you know, this is a limited release, like I drafted it the way it is. I mean, if they will agree, you know, the only way that we're gonna get additional protection is not version 1 or version 2, but if we go back to them in version 3 and say, all right, our understanding is that you are also releasing us from all the interest claim, either all the interest claim or at least the interest related to the stormwater cost recovery fee. That's all I'm saying, is like, it doesn't make sense just to go back and say, hey, we just want you to take this out and then we'll sign it. Like, we're just incurring attorney fees and it's the same result. So, and that's what I need direction from you is, which way do you want to go? Like, are we okay with what we have here? Or are we trying to negotiate to say that we want more? We want either, you know, one of those two options, but we want some kind of additional release related to the interest.
I voted on the original release, okay, and, you know, I'm okay with that release. I'm not okay with adding this proposed paragraph 3 to it.
Is it the wording of the first sentence? I don't have it in front of me, but.
Well,
So Reed, do you think they would be successful in suing for and collecting the interest?
It's not my place to decide that. I mean, you know, there's risk and it would be, you know, against my client's interest to like say one way or the other. And that's for a judge to decide.
I can see it both ways. Leaving the paragraph out, we still have those to deal with. Leaving it in, we still have those to deal with, so. If you leave the third paragraph in, at least they can't do any more on the 23,000, right? It's done.
What's that?
If we sign it, they can't do anything on the 23,000, that was done, that's what the release is. But either way, whether we leave it out or not, they can still do credit interest. So, depends on which way you wanna go.
but adding this, to me, it gives them permission, you know, which,
By not signing it, it gives them permission to sue us for even more on the original part.
no, it
Like
doesn't.
Mike said, either way,
Yes, it does.
either way, whether you take that in or leave it out, they can still come back and sue us, you know, and
Right, so why, you know, why change it, I guess?
well, because their lawyers advised them to do that, and we asked them to have their lawyers look at it and make it, and it's a,
And that's fine, just because the lawyer asked them, doesn't mean we need to accept
I mean,
it.
they're protecting themselves too, and we're protecting ourselves.
Sure. I agree.
You know, Reed's here giving us advice.
I have a motion on the table.
What is it? Again, please.
The motion was to, not change the release, by adding any more language to it, to let it stand as it was proposed and voted on earlier and sent to the church for signatures.
I just have the updated one. Original release just did not have paragraph 3.
Well, how about,
A way that the parties could agree, which is this document right here. If not, then it's just, we're gonna have to go back and negotiate and try to.
well, maybe we should work on a third release.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the decision, is do we sign it and move forward, or do we go back and negotiate?
So do we need a motion to, we've already signed the original, we've sent it to them, correct?
Right.
So do we need a motion to null and void that and to start over with a third release?
No, because all we did was authorize on our side, and we don't need to.
So,
notify
so
anything.
tonight,
I need
we should not take,
direction.
any, action on this, so I would withdraw my motion.
Well,
Unless anyone wants
let's
to
let
make a motion
everybody else.
otherwise.
I think, like what you're doing, Ashley, I think you're irritating an already irritating situation, and we're opening ourselves up for them to come back and go after us for more. They tried to compromise in the first place, I think, and I don't know, I think we're opening ourselves up for even worse stuff than what you say by signing that.
Well,
We keep we've dragging this thing on for 3 or 4 months now, and we keep saying this and that and everything, and just one more thing, we have our lawyers' recommendations and email and end up meeting here and everything, and it just, you wanted our lawyer, you didn't want to be here without a lawyer at a meeting, he's giving us advice, and maybe we ought to take that advice.
well, be fair, Ron, we've proposed different things, and then, they have to have their meetings and discuss and talk about, then they come back, and so we've had a good, healthy back and forth conversation, okay, with the church, and again, 17 years, it doesn't have to be decided, tonight, this week, this month,
Well, that's what
this
we've
year.
said now for 4 or 5 months.
Right.
So it's getting to an almost irritating, healthy situation. But what does the rest of the board, Mike just said, now what does Tammy and Tyrone think? Do you want to insure that amount of money, or do you?
I think on this, the 23,000, the 15 years, they have $17,000 in interest. That is related to the same thing for the stormwater, because it's the interest off the stormwater. Now, if you want to separate it as 2 separate claims for both as for the stormwater, because, yeah, I get it, that's the stormwater charge. So, I mean, if you want to break it up as 2 different claims, or if we want to have that, which originally I thought that's what we were doing, was having the 23,000 was to be like, okay, we'll be done with everything, you guys drop the interest, but I can see how they would look at it too, is that's actually a separate, like Reed's saying, a separate situation on this, but I was looking at stormwater, waited so long that, because we could have said, we're gonna give you.
Well, then
$5
maybe
grand or
we'll be
zero.
okayed it. There's 3 separate things here. Maybe you guys, when we okayed it, should have said, we're only okaying the one thing, but without the interest. That was, when did we okay that? 2-3 months ago?
That's what I thought
And
I was
so,
doing with this
yeah,
stormwater.
well, you didn't say it. Nobody said anything. There's line 3 here with all this interest we did. And when Reed's copy came back, it didn't say anything about not excluding the interest. Never once has anybody ever said about excluding the interest, so.
In the same token, I mean, they waited 20 years, the interest was never, all of a sudden they decided they want this money back, and 20 years, so the interest is $17,000.
Well, they might not ask
They
for
could
it,
have done
Mike.
this
I mean, they might.
years ago, and
Well, then when they ask for the interest, you're right. Then when they ask for the interest, then come up and have our lawyer fight it out and say they should have asked for it then, and here's the 10 reasons. And then it goes to court and you vote on it, but they might, we don't even know for sure they're gonna ask for the interest and stuff at this point. It's just one of the original proposals.
Well, by adding this paragraph, claim for the interest occurred in obtaining a loan to fund the stormwater cost recovery fee. So, this is spelling out, yes, please sue us for this, please ask for this money, this interest. So.
Well, you guys have to understand that all you did was vote to agree to pay $23,200 and deny the other.
Right.
So you didn't reach an agreement, you didn't say, hey, if you're gonna, we'll come down or this or that, like, there's no consideration given for them releasing their other claim. So
Of interest.
that's for any claim, yeah. I mean, all you guys did as a board was vote to say this is what we will approve and this is what we'll deny, so it would make sense that everything you deny is still an open claim. I mean, I think that's, you know, why they are coming out of this. We can go back and say, try to negotiate to say that we'll break this down and try to include, you know, an additional release for the loan interest related to the stormwater cost recovery fee. But I mean, that part of it you guys denied. I mean, that means that it goes to, it's an open claim. There was no.
But that language is not in the current release. You're saying that the language
It's narrowly tailored to include everything except that. So it says, related to the stormwater cost recovery fees totaling $23,230, not the fees plus the interest, because, you know, they didn't, I mean, you guys just voted to deny that. You know, it's just-
Okay.
So that's what it is. You know, I think that if this goes to court and we actually think that we're gonna be able to defend the interest claim through our release, then we're gonna have to go back to them and get better language. But I think it's a weak legal argument to try to make, just because, you know, we didn't give them anything. It wasn't really a negotiated settlement for them to give up that legal right. We said no.
But not in the release. We did not say no in the release.
The scope of the release only includes stormwater.
Well, in the stormwater is what I'm concentrating on, you know, the oversized credits, you know, we just voted on that. Okay, so the stormwater portion, again, I go back to, if we're gonna give them a check, refund that money, I don't want this town to come under future claims of interest, because they evidently had to borrow that money.
Yeah, so if you wanna take that position, then we'll have to go back to them and negotiate.
Okay. So I guess,
But I need to know what the town council feels, not just
Right.
one person.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, like I originally thought, stormwater, I thought was all stormwater. The interest is different wording as an interest. So all this together is what, around 40,000 something?
What do you think, Tim?
Well, I think, like Ashley does, I don't like the wording of that, but I have to agree that I think it needs to be changed and maybe sent back for a review.
change as far as a new release, drop a new release.
I think ultimately, maybe I misunderstand, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but I think, you know, we're all happy with paying the 23,000, what was it, 230? But I think that's kind of where we wanted it to stop, and we don't want them to have any abilities to come back for anything.
As it pertains to stormwater.
Correct.
So, we need a motion to correct Reed on how we want that redone, or a fourth option, or go back.
yeah, I mean, I don't think you just need to authorize me to continue settlement negotiations. It's just, I can communicate with them and see what they're willing to.
With that
Agreed.
understanding of what we
Yeah, I just wanna make sure you understand that just, you know, saying in a, a vote, like, hey, we wanted to be able to release this claim because we're paying this one, doesn't really mean that that's what happened. But, we're still gonna have the claim for the loan for the other amounts. I think that's pretty clear. So what you want me to go back and ask for is if they will agree that they're gonna release the amount for the loan related to the stormwater and cost recovery. Correct.
Say that one more time.
You want me to say that the release does include interest accrued in obtaining a loan to fund the stormwater cost recovery fees. However, the church is not being released of their claim for interest accrued in the oversized credit costs. You want to split those?
Split. Yes. Just the stormwater interest.
I agree.
Just need a
I'll see what they say.
We don't need a motion for that.
We don't.
So I need to withdraw my earlier motion, correct?
We need to make a motion for that, or just?
I don't think, you can, it doesn't hurt. If you want to specifically make a motion to specify what you want me to communicate, you can do that.
And then on this item, so item number 1 and 2, we've taken action on, correct?
You've taken action on all, you had already denied the claim for the interest.
Okay. So
For
there's
the
nothing else?
stormwater, you just voted, to not pay anything for the credits. So it's all been addressed,
This has all been addressed.
correct?
Great. Make a motion to adjourn.
No comments from the residents?
BFNS easement contract, we've already talked about that, so. Make a motion to adjourn.
Can we have any comments from the residents? It's an open meeting, guys. Let them speak.
There's nothing else on the agenda, so.
Well, maybe they would like to, because you didn't open it up for the discussion, which you should. It seems to me like you ought to at least offer it, see if somebody has a comment that they would like to do it. Unless you just want
Anybody
to.
have a
Steve,
comment?
could you hold this? Just 1 second, please. Just put your finger under there and over on this side, don't press any buttons.
Cindy Marston, 49 Shady Lane. A couple things. One is you approved the stormwater refund some time ago and instructed Reed to write up a contract. Since then, you've been negotiating with the contract, more or less. In July, you approved BFNS to look into the right-of-way acquisition for the church. Ron read the exact motion at the last meeting. And so BFNS wrote something up, and Tyrone went down and signed it without any discussion or nobody really knew what was in it.
Everybody
maybe
on the
you
board
can-
actually got that before everyone to sign it, and that
Yeah.
was what we approved to go down there.
Actually,
And then
it
after
was,
Ron spent
you
$200
didn't know what
talking
the
to Reed about it,
parameters
I asked him if
were.
anything was illegal, and he said, no, so go ahead
There
and
was
file a
nothing in
lawsuit. Waste more
the,
time.
there was nothing in the parameters.
Why don't you let her talk, Tyrone?
There's
The
nothing
president of the board, let
about
her
the
talk.
parameters of the contract that was stated in a public meeting. It wasn't stated what the cost was gonna be, or what the scope of the work was gonna be. We didn't actually know anything. Even when Reed took the action to try to remedy your error when you signed it at the last meeting this week, there still wasn't any discussion really of what was in that contract. The other thing is you just kind of flew by that BFNS thing. Again, there was no real discussion about what it's entailed. And I'd like to know now why the town of Dayton is involved in this. In the church's utility service agreement, it states very clearly that the church is required to provide all easements for the utilities. And they did. I know they did because Ron and I granted one of them, and Bob Grove, who Bob Adams used, drew up the easement for us and for the church, and the church paid for it. I know that's the way it happened. And that's the way, as Ron was telling me, that a draft utility service agreement that Michelle drew up said that the developer is required to provide all the easements.
You got it right here on the draft, Michelle. And you said that the
So, here we are, using taxpayer money to try to take easements from the church, and when the town shouldn't even be involved in it. It's not the town's responsibility, and you're spending taxpayer money. As I heard the other night, $10,000, possibly so far, then who's gonna actually pay what did somebody say, 17,000 for easements on top of that? And then you were complaining, Tyrone, about the legal fees the other night, that you didn't want Ron calling Reed, that you wanted it
I
to
didn't
go
want
through you.
everybody to call.
But yet the meeting before that, you all gave the marshal just open access to Reed with no regard to the cost, or no mention of the cost. But you try to limit a council member.
He was
And
correct.
tonight, instead of getting this issue with the church resolved, you're spending more attorney money in trying to Mickey Mouse the church around. Last January, February, when you weren't even involved in utilities, Ashley, you and Tyrone were falling all over yourselves to meet with the church and try to work out an agreement on these things on their letter because you were desperate. You wanted those easements so badly. Now that you figured out that you can try to take them either with some fabricated fake easement that you think is granted on the old utility service agreement, or by going to court and taking them by eminent domain, now all of a sudden you're trying to delay it and delay it and delay it. It's you, Ashley,
Delay what?
that's sitting, refunding the church's money. It's you that's doing it. No one else hardly says a word, but of course they follow you like a puppet. And at all these meetings, you are the only one that talks. And it's you that's delaying it because you don't like the church. We seem to have a different set of standards. If you like somebody, or a council member is getting something out of it, you will bend over backwards to do favors for the developers. If it's a pillar of the community, like the church is, you make them do things that are outside what our ordinance requires. And then you don't follow through on the ordinance, like with the oversizing credit.
We go
The
get
ordinance
on
says, the ordinance says, refund the oversizing. It's selective. If you like them, you don't, and if you do like them, you'll bend over backwards.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Stan. Appreciate it.
Sue Hyder, 750 Shady Lane, about the 23,000 for the church. Now, if we called their money for 17 years, wouldn't we owe them interest on that money? Why not?
He said that he hasn't found anything that proves that.
So if you hold my money for 17 years, I'm not entitled to any interest on it?
The town's earned interest on it, sitting in their bank account.
Just curious as to why not.
Anybody else?
I got a question. Michelle, with the Ron that's from BF&S, gave us that report on the easements and everything. So us buying that easement on down there, you're actually saying there was no easements, right? All the way down there?
No, they're not, we're not saying that. We're saying we're gonna go the quickest route and
Well, I don't think that's what it says, but
I mean, there's no documented easement.
there are no
It's
easements.
faster to, you can either, what would you say, sue them for breach of contract, sue them for not,
To enforce
to enforce the utility service agreement, or you can go the other route, which goes to court, it takes time, or you can go the other route and just act like there's none there, just go ahead and
But
require.
there are none there,
And get them a
right?
fair market
There
value.
is no easement, there's not documented anywhere in this world, there's easements on down there, Michelle,
We're,
you know?
we are trying to, put forth a good effort with the church, good faith effort. We're gonna.
No, you aren't. You-
Because it's the
we're
only
already-
way you
we're
can
paying-
do it.
We're paying you money, fair money for these easements.
No, you aren't.
You know, we're trying to avoid trying to take any type of a.
For a year,
legal
you've
claim.
been saying, Michelle, standing out here,
Don't
BFNS,
put words
you've
in
been,
my mouth.
Mike Smith and you have stood here and said, there's easements down there, the town has easements all the way to the south end of that property.
I
You
said
stood out
the
here and
utility
said.
service agreement said that the church would grant those easements for future utility use. The church has not granted them yet.
You
There
said,
are
you
no
said there was
existing
easements, and the people up here on the board says there's easements, so they can
No,
go
there's no
ahead
easement.
and go down and take.
We're bending over backwards to.
I think the record is that everyone said the church is required under the utility service agreement to provide them for, at no cost to the town of Dayton.
Yes, that is what I said.
That's been
Not that
the
they're
argument, I'm not saying that
physically-
that's.
But the
So
developer's
why
not
would they-
required
why
to
would
do
they
that.
have to provide them at no cost to the town of Dayton, but the builders, but we're doing all the work and paying to provide the easements now for the builders. And it's gonna cost the town of Dayton.
It's the same reason that the developer has to provide it all along Dayton Road for the next developer.
No,
So
they
when-
don't. Where does
yeah,
it
they
say
do.
that? No, they don't, Michelle.
Just to their
They
property
absolutely-
line.
It says to the south of, to the developed property. That you're talking about on past the developed property in
I'm talking
two
about
thousand
The
two.
new developer.
No,
We're
but,
requiring the new developer to provide easements through the planning process all the way to their south property line, so the next person does not
no,
have
but
this
why didn't that new
problem.
developer have to pay for those easements? And
He's
if
gonna
the-
provide them on his property, just like the church wouldn't have to.
She's playing
The
with
church
words.
had to get them from their property to Ron and Cindy's property, from Shady Lane on down years ago. We made them it was Mike Smith, your company that did it, made the church, on all our documents, get the easements from, and bring them on down the road to their development and pay for everything.
So they paid for the easements?
They paid for the easements, and they paid for the survey, and they paid for everything. So why now would we not have, why would we now, the town, pay for that? They didn't want to pay for the church, but they want to pay for the developers. That is wrong. And if we do that, I'm gonna bring a lawsuit myself, because that is dead wrong, that you can't give one, you gotta do the same thing for each person. If if you make the church pay for it, you gotta make the developers pay for it.
Ron, with Baker Farms, there's gonna be a utility service agreement, and it's gonna say that Baker Farms provides all easements to the town of Dayton for no cost.
Yes. It'll say the
We're
same
talking about the
thing.
easements to get down there, though,
I know, but I'm
Reed.
talking about, that's
Yes.
what they are providing us, so we're not gonna be paying, but they're gonna be providing, because they are,
They're providing the easements from Wesleyan Drive down to Baker Farms.
on
is
all
what
of
you
the
said.
Baker Farms property, like,
No,
No.
Reed, you're mixing words. I said, the question is, are they gonna provide the easements from the point of hookup, which in our guides say you gotta provide, the developers have to come back and hook up and provide the easements, the water, pay for everything from where it is now, Wesleyan Drive, all the way down there. I don't care what they do on their own property, that's besides the
In
thing.
the cost, in the service utility agreement, we can have it in there that the developers are paying for those easements. So in essence, you're going to bill back what
Right.
you're spending today to the developer.
so what
Is
we
that correct?
know is that the extension is gonna be paid for by the developer, and what we don't know is if they are going to pay for any of the cost of the FNS or the cost of paying for the easements.
But we would ask them to do that. We'd be silly not to.
Right, yeah.
How do we know it though? I mean, this is the first.
They'll be signing a service utility agreement. It's,
The service utility agreement, you gotta either have in there who's paying for it actually, and nobody said up to this time.
we'll
that
ask for
they're
our money
paying.
back.
They're-
You'll ask for you're
Yeah,
not
that
done
would-
spending money here, okay? So
You haven't
Well, why don't you just have?
We
why don't
haven't,
you-
we haven't granted a service utility.
Why don't you have them like the church? You made them go out at their own cost and procure those things.
I did not.
Well, you were on the board at the time, your name's there, but you didn't sign it
That-
because you must have missed the meeting or
You know,
something.
that all started before I was on the board, but
You were on the contract.
on
yeah,
the,
so
on the
you-
final document, yes, I was.
Well, yeah, so you know about that, and at that time, you didn't make them, you made the church pay for everything up front. No refunds or anything, right up front, they had to pay for that.
But
They had to pay
separately,
the-
Ron, in the utility service agreement, there are fees that Baker Farms is paying for.
Yeah, I know, other
The
fees,
same things, stormwater cost recovery fees.
and the church paid for that?
Right, it's the same fees, like they are.
Yeah, but
They are
listen,
in
I'm
there.
I'm not talking about the.
They are being treated equally though.
No, not on the procuring of the easements, they aren't. The church had to pay the lawyer, the surveyor, and get the easements and provide them to the town at no cost to the town. It says in there, at no cost to the town. What we're doing now is,
But
Baker Farms.
the church
correct-
never had to go on someone else's property. The
They
church
came-
was
they went on
their
ours.
own
they had to
property.
come on our, they did too, they had to come back on somebody else's property, the same thing as Baker's Farm, and talk to those landowners, procure them, survey it, and have their lawyers write it up. So why, they had to get off their property and come back. They had to come back toward the town and grab them off of private
Well,
property.
not in the utility service agreement that we're looking at in 2002, like that just didn't involve easements.
It's right in there, Reed. It says about the easements.
They're attached.
Huh?
On their property.
No, they had to get it on Ron and Cindy's property. They had to
Ron.
come back on Ron and Cindy's between Shady Lane and Wesleyan Drive, and the town made them get the easements and pay for everything. Just like we should make Baker's Farm come back to Wesleyan Drive across the church's property and buy the easements and pay for them. You either do the same for both or you don't. They had to come back on private property. In fact, they had to do it twice. They had to get the easements for the sewage the first time before that and put in a sewage line to their church across our property. Then the town board at the time wouldn't give the building permit and made them re-get new easements over against Dayton Road and pay for everything and take it on down to the church. So they had to come back.
So does everybody understand the reason that we try to make, before we sign a utility service agreement, to make sure they provide easements through the property so we can keep going down the road and we don't have to do this
Yeah.
every year or two?
Well,
And
maybe you guys should have done it back when you handled it back
they,
then.
well,
You know, it's your organization that took care of
She
it.
was
Technically-
involved.
It's your legal papers here, it's your papers here signed by Mike Smith that's saying all this in the board at that time. But the still thing is, guys, you gotta treat both entities the same.
Michelle, is it customary in service utility agreements to ask developers for the reimbursement that municipality goes through to get easements when they need to?
not in my experience.
In our guide, it says in our own development guide, doesn't it, that they have to buy their own easements and get their own, pay for that? It's on our own development guide.
I don't think it is.
It doesn't talk about purchasing easements on other land, because that's gonna be specific or different for each situation.
And they
It
are-
talks,
It talks about providing all easements.
right. it talks
Providing
about
all
The
easements.
the owner, our development guide here, the owner developer shall to provide all the easements necessary to provide water, sanitary sewer, and service at no cost to town.
Right.
Then on top of it, we made them sign, the church, that agreement, and they not only had to do it, they had to come back on somebody else's property and buy those easements and pay for all the stuff.
So
All
Ron,
I'm
you
saying
was,
is that what you read does not cover acquiring easements on other property, like that's, I don't know that that's a different situation.
Well,
That's-
sure, it says all
Why?
easements, Reed, it
Why?
doesn't say only on this property or only on that size property, it says all easements. It says they have to get all easements, that's why do you think the old board made him get the easements? Why do you think they made him go back and get the easements on other
It
properties?
says developer or owner, so it applies to the land that you are developing or own. That's
Okay,
what
so
you're
the
required to
developers or the
provide.
owners, that's fine, one of them get it, but the town shouldn't have to get it.
Ron, you would agree that it would be proper for this town to demand from the developer, the money that we are spending to secure the easements currently. You would agree with that?
I would agree that the town ought to ask, if we are spending it, why we're spending it, I don't know, but if we are, I would ask the developer to pay for all costs to acquire the easements, along with the easements,
That's what
just
it
like
said.
everybody else.
Yeah.
On
So-
both
so-
sides of the road.
So,
On both sides of the road.
so, I think, that is something that we should include in the service utility agreement or in our
Right, I need
negotiations
authority
with the
from you
developers.
to go to Dan Teeter and ask for that, if that's what you want me to do.
I think that's one thing on the list, yes.
If we just write it into the utility service agreement, so we haven't finalized the fees and
Yeah.
stuff. You can do it as an addition to the utility service agreement in the thing, and then we'll present them the whole utility service agreement.
Yeah.
And they can either agree to it or not, and they don't get you know what I mean, that it's part of that agreement. We need to spell everything out, because of what happened with the church and the coming back and suing for different pieces of the utility service agreement. We need to show all credits for upsizing, extensions, whatever, and subtract it all out and spell it all out. That way, if this comes up again, because that's what happened in the last one, is different versions, there were negotiations and changes and different versions got made, and it lost, no one has the middle versions that, we need to make sure all of that's ironclad in the utility service
I'm just saying
agreement.
that typically before you would go to the expense of drafting up the contract, you would typically talk to the other side to get the terms,
Sure.
Yeah.
and then draft it, and then
Oh.
present it to them.
Yeah, a lot of times the towns do what they want it to be and then present it, and then they can come back with if they have any changes. I mean, there's that's why there were six different ones, but we just need to document it well.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so maybe decide what the town wants, like you said, you're gonna ask them for the cost of us to procure that easement for them, the cost of the easement, put that in the utility service agreement, present what you want, so that everybody's on the same, and they can present back, if they have any arguments or want any credits for whatever they want, and then,
So when are we gonna decide on what we want them to pay for then? Is it this meeting right now, or is it?
That's another meeting, but,
You can provide it
It's
to
a
me,
church meeting.
or, we're just, we can do all of that outside of a public meeting. I can draft it up and present
Bring
it
it to the next meeting?
I mean, we don't have the drainage plan yet from them, we need to, maybe, although this all needs to happen here.
Yeah, that's the
Drainage
issue.
and service utility,
we
that
probably
comes
need a
together
new
here soon.
draft. We need a new draft agreement with those costs in there now that we know what they are. And, till we know
Okay.
so you still don't know all of what they.
Still don't know all the costs yet, yeah.
So we could do a separate agreement just to ensure that we're gonna get the costs reimbursed if there are other items that we know we aren't gonna be able to sign in 2 to 3 months.
So we're having,
For the
it's
utility.
$10,000 for Michelle, it's gonna cost I asked you, 9,000 up to that amount.
For me. I'm not
Well, I talked to you,
gonna lie.
Michelle, I talked to you on the phone and asked you how much it cost.
I sent you the agreement.
And I called you on the phone and asked you how much it cost, you said up to like $9,800, okay? Remember that conversation on the phone?
Yes, I sent you the
Okay,
whole.
and I said, well, who's paying that $9,800 for all this getting the cost of land and all that stuff? Who's paying for that? Is the town paying for it? And gonna ask Malacus the money back? Or are we just doing it and the taxpayers gonna pay for it?
I think yes, for the money back.
Well, you think, why do we okay spending 10,000 and not even have a discussion on who's paying for it, Ashley? And then on top of it, Michelle, like I told you, everybody wanted us to work with Malacus, and he never called us at all till I finally told Dave Crandall to get a hold of Malacus and have him call us, to make an effort, because Mark and everybody wanted the water on one side and the sewage on the other. So 3 weeks ago, Malacus and he calls me, did you not want the water on one side and the sewage on the other? So what are you smiling for there? Like it's a stupid statement, Michelle.
You about done, Ron?
No, I'm not about that.
We
No,
can do
wait,
this-
no,
we
wait,
can
no,
do
wait,
this
I wanna
in
ask a
utility.
question, I wanna ask a question here.
We're going over the same things that we've done.
No, no, well, too
Stop
bad,
getting
this
back
is
to
a
getting back to
utility,
this church.
we need to get something solved here. You just
We
said
have
at the
a-
last meeting, all of us need to sit down and get this, you talk like you wanted the water on one side, we all need to get to that goal. I actually said, yeah, you can work out something. So I go to, I'm telling you something, I go to
No, you told us
Malacca.
before. We've
No,
gone
wait,
past that already.
I'm not
We're
finished,
on one side.
I haven't done
There's been a
that.
motion and a second. All in favor, second by saying aye.
Beta, Ron, go ahead, I'm still recording.
So my question is, why does BF&S, our experts in the field, not call the other people and ask if, and they're hired to negotiate something, why don't they negotiate and talk to both parties? Why do they just talk to one party and then slam the town with a $10,000 bill, but we don't even know who's paying?
And the town will end up getting stuck with that and paying for the easements too.
And you watch, the town's gonna pay for a lot of this.